to another episode of Guarani Vision. Welcome to our new World Cup qualifiers preview of the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me as always are my three great co-hosts. And guys, this is it. We've kindly reached the new matches of World Cup qualification. We finally saw our beloved Paraguay play their first two games last month against Peru and Venezuela, one that ended in a 2-2 draw and the other one that ended in a 1-0 win against Venezuela. So good start for now. Now we have two other games that we'll be talking about, two big games, I would say, against the classic rival of Argentina, and then against Bolivia at home. Super excited for this one. Can't wait to talk about it. So let's go straight to it. But firstly, let's go straight to the mother country where Fede, if we had too much football trying to get mixed up all around the world, certainly in Paraguay, you got games happening on the day of the World Cup qualifiers. It's insane. But anyway, how are you, man?
It's a week with a lot of football here. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Maria. Hi, Ralph. Hello. Ba'eshapa, guys. Maria wanted me to say something in Guarani, so there we go. That's a little hello, how are you, in our sweet Guarani, for those who don't know. Also, our official native language besides Spanish, obviously, here in the country. Well, it's a week with tons of football. Like I said, the national team will play on Thursday. But meanwhile, we have a lot of matches here during the week. The local tournament going on because of the COVID. We have a tight schedule, Olympia, and it's always rival Cerro Porteño going at it, but not in the field, confronting for different reasons. First, because they had an agreement due to the tight calendar that I was talking about ending the year. This agreement was to play no matter what, and this weekend was supposed to be the day that the Super Clásico was supposed to happen between Olimpia and Cerro Porteño. That agreement was not respected by Cerro Porteño. Olimpia thought that it was going to be respected, so there the two biggest teams in Paraguay kind of crashed there in these last couple of days. It's not the only issue that's giving trouble to Olimpia from Cerro Porteño, because they also are talking about putting pressure on the FA to dig in deeper into something that we talked about here in Guarani Vision, also in previous episodes. The Marco Trovato issue, the fixed games in 4 different tournaments. Cerro Porteño wants a committee to go after that also. So there's a lot of things going on here in Paraguay besides the Albirroja. This week we have those matches going on. Cerro Porteño not playing. They're not playing the Super Clásico. They're not playing the match during the week either. But we will talk about Albirroja today. Preview of the next 2 matches. Many injured also due to different reasons, actually, and many of these players were in our coach's plans. We came out strong, I believe, after the first 2 matches with 4 points versus Peru and versus Venezuela, but with just so much to improve also, right? Versus Argentina, it's always special for the Paraguayan people. And then we have Bolivia, that has a coach that worked actually here in Paraguay for a certain time, Cesar Farias, so he probably knows a thing or two about our Paraguayan players. And Britos is gonna have to be ready with a good game plan, obviously, versus Argentina, and pick the right players in these circumstances.
And certainly, we look at these 2 games, and I'll introduce Maria here as well. This is it. These are one of the few games that, of course, every game is important for Paraguay in these World Cup qualifiers. But ultimately, when you're playing against your big rivals, that's the one people want to circle on. That's the game that everyone's focused on. How do you feel heading into this game on Thursday, and then obviously the game against Bolivia on Tuesday?
Yeah, definitely an exciting week again. Hey guys, Ba'eshapa, like Fede was saying, it's been a crazy couple of days. I was just thinking about it, and I think it just came back into, like, I kind of realized it's been such a crazy week, past couple of days here in the United States, that I kind of I'm not gonna say I forgot, but it kind of just threw me off the edge, the fact that Paraguay is playing again, and against Argentina, which is one of our biggest rivals. So it's definitely going to be not just exciting, but a lot of feelings, a lot of sentiments, a lot of I guess rivalry and pride that we have for our country. We'll be seeing that this Thursday, and just happy that the Albirroja is back. Unfortunately, like Fede said, there are a couple of players that are gonna miss this next coming game and these next two games. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens, and Berizzo hopefully makes the right calls and works with what he has. But I think that we still have a good team, although we have one of the biggest names out. I still think that we have a good team, but we'll see. We tend to have um, good results with Argentina, with Bolivia. It's a tough one to call, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm certainly excited.
And yeah, I think to repeat your sentiments and introduce Ralph as well. I mean, certainly you and I both know, having chatted over the last few days, it feels like this election cycle has kind of even we kind of like forgot that there's actually football happening, and we're also fixed onto like states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and we have to stop and think for a second. It's like, wait a minute, no, there's other things besides that. But how are you, Ralph? And certainly it's the big one. Like I said, I mean, these two teams like to play against each other. They're always tight games. Historically, they've always fared out. I mean, obviously the connection from immigrants as well. The biggest immigrant community in Argentina are of Paraguayans. You have Argentine-born Paraguayans on this national team. I mean, there's a lot of storylines heading into this game.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody watching. Should I be saying Guarani something? Baeteco. There you go.
Ipora. There we go.
Say
the last word.
Yeah, I think like Maria said, it kind of crept up on me too, this game, because not only did we have the election here in Miami, we had a storm that came on Monday. So like no school for my kids, all that kind of stuff. But here we are. It's like we're all modo albirroja. We're all like ready to go. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think this game is always really interesting, the away fixture with Argentina, because it's one of the away games that you're not kind of expected to get points from, but Paraguay historically always have. So then I think there's always a lot of excitement, and there's less pressure than even the home fixture because you're playing away. Totally different to, say, going to another big rival, Brazil, where pretty much nobody can take points off Brazil in Brazil. So this is a game you always go into thinking, maybe we've got a chance. Historically, we've done it before. And I think, like you said, Roberto, there's so many stories from Argentina and Paraguay. They share a lot of things, a lot of culture. There's a lot of crossover, more so than their other neighbors who are Brazil and Bolivia. So I think there's always like a nice, interesting rivalry going on. And I think we'll have a good game on Thursday because both teams have a couple of injuries. Paraguay are maybe a team in the ascendancy, and I would say Argentina's a team kind of still trying to find its way, Scaloni. So yeah, I think it's good. Looking forward to it, and let's hopefully get a positive result there to take back to Defensores for the game against Bolivia.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that as well. I think certainly the game is always a classic one. You had mentioned, yeah, it kind of feels as if, though, heading into this game, one must feel confident. I mean, certainly we understand that it's Argentina. You have the best player in the world, Lionel Messi. You know what you get. But if you remember, guys, in the interview that we did with Diego Gavilan a couple of days ago, like these guys, like they know they're up for the task. Like this isn't to say that they won't play their hardest regardless of the opponent, but it's something special when you're playing against your big rival, especially away from home. And Ralph, going into you on this one as well. Historically, Paraguay don't have a good record against Argentina, but having said that, over the last encounters that they played, and they will play in Buenos Aires in La Bombonera, they've done pretty well, actually. 5 draws, I think, in the last times that they played each other in Buenos Aires. So historically, it could favor Paraguay in this case. I mean, how do you see this coming about, and how do you see Argentina? Like you said, they have some injuries as well. I was like looking at some of the lineups that we saw. And even from what we saw in the first 2 games, I mean, they beat Ecuador obviously in the first game, but that was due to a penalty from Lionel Messi, and they had to come back against Bolivia over there in altitude. So even though they did get 6 points in their first 2 games, you could still say that maybe they're not just as convincing as one would say. So maybe that plays into our factor, especially given that we've already played Argentina almost over a year ago as well in the Copa America. That it can favor us. It can really favor us heading into this game on Thursday.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, firstly, talking about the historic performance in Buenos Aires, you're right that in World Cup qualifiers, Paraguay have drawn 5 games in a row, dating back to 1993. And then most recently, the last time they played there was 2008, where they got a 1-1 draw when Gabriel Heinze scored an own goal in Paraguay's favor. In fact, the only time they've lost since we started the round robin format, so in the early 90s, the only time we lost was 2012 in Cordoba with I think Johnny Favreau scored a penalty and we lost 3-1 that game. That's the only time we've lost in Argentina, and that was arguably the worst side we had and the worst period Paraguay have been in qualifiers recently with Peluso as the coach. I was looking at that lineup that day. I mean, it was a long time ago, but none of those players are even close to the squad, even the young ones. So I think it's really, it's really a very different team and a much stronger team to the one time we have lost. And there's definitely the motivation. There's always a motivation to play against Argentina. There's less pressure because you're playing away from home, like I mentioned earlier. So I really think what we've got here is a good chance with all those kind of external factors, so like history, motivation. And then on the pitch, we go back to the Copa America game a year ago, which was our most recent test. And it was a game that Paraguay performed very well in. It's a game that somebody like Almiron, who we've talked about so much on the show, but it's a kind of game he likes because you'll have a team that will actually come to pressure Paraguay. It will leave space on the counterattack, which maybe Peru didn't do because Peru played that game very, very intelligently. So this will give us those kind of spaces and opportunities we didn't see in the first 2 games. So I'm confident. I think there's definitely a chance to get something out of this game.
I was listening to you, Ralph, and I was thinking also what Argentina has kept all these years, right? I remember most of those games that you were mentioning because I used to travel a lot actually before COVID, before all these problems to travel. We always be at these matches. I was in Cordoba that day that you talked about Peluso and those guys. And I remember Di Maria, I remember Messi already being there and being stars of these national teams. So Argentina has historic players, but there's been these games lately where I think Berizzo and even Scaloni probably can get a lot out of it, for their strategy towards this game. They faced each other off lately, and I don't know if that's going to be an advantage to who's going to take more advantage of that situation. Strategy wise, it's going to be a good matchup also between Berizzo and Scaloni. They're both young coaches and they're winning their space in their national teams also. Berizzo, we've questioned some things here, and Scaloni, I believe, still doesn't have the people by his side in Argentina also. So these are 2 coaches that still need to convince, and even with the players inside the pitch also, we have Sanchez, we have Richard Sanchez, we have Matias Rojas that is coming back now to the squad. These guys have faced off against Argentina lately. They've been against Messi. They've even in most cases been successful in stopping Messi. So maybe that's something on Berizzo's mind also, because it's got to be part of the game plan, right? You have to stop one of the best players in the world.
Definitely agree with both of you guys. And I just want to re-mention the fact that Diego, in our last interview, also talked about the fact that, playing with Argentina is such a big deal, but it's also expected. Like, the results are also expected. We've had a bunch of draws, and we can expect at least take away 1 point from Argentina. So hopefully it's 3, but it's expected of Paraguay to just do, I guess, the bare minimum and yes, and winning, of course. But I think that's kind of the mentality that Paraguay has had for a while now. But I think they definitely need to change that as well. Start winning games, although it could be scary, playing against Argentina, playing against Brazil, and but we can't continue with that mentality. And echoing with what Fede was saying about having players that understand the Argentina team, such as, for example, we have a good example with Sanabria that knows how to play with Messi or against Messi in La Liga. So those are the kind of players that Berizzo could keep in mind and try him out better. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I think obviously we have beaten Argentina. You know, that's not foreign to us. Like, we know that we can get a result against them, especially at their home turf. So this isn't to say that we can go there and just hope for a draw or something. Like, no, I think the mentality has changed, and like, we can get something in if we're able to win. I think a result like this, especially if they get the 3 points, I think that makes us much more serious. I think ultimately it puts us into a more better landscape for many other nations that maybe are not too convinced yet, or are just wondering like, hey, you know, is this Paraguay side for real, or are they just this? And I think if they're able to get a good result against Argentina, then that would prove some of the doubters wrong. You know, it's going to be a great game. And I think ultimately as well, a good result would ultimately head into better motivation for the next game against Bolivia at the Defensores. Obviously, I want to repeat what Diego said. He said that he feels more fearful for that game than the one against Argentina. And it feels weird as well because, you know, obviously history proves that we have never lost to Bolivia in World Cup qualifying at home ever. You know, perfect record so far. This Bolivia side, I think, is maybe one of the poorest, if not the poorest Bolivia side in quite some time. They got smashed by Brazil in their first game, and they blew a 2-1 lead. They lost 2-1 at home to Argentina. So they're not in a good shape at the moment. But even then, Maria, I remember you were saying this in our first preview, that you shouldn't underestimate these opponents. It doesn't matter if you're Bolivia or Brazil, whatever. Like, you have to treat them with respect and just play your game, honestly. Like, ultimately, I think on paper we should win, and it should be a result that should be a convincing win, not like a 1-0 or 2-1 or something. Like, no, I think it has to be convincing because you're at home. You want to win, obviously, at home and have a good record, but to do it in a convincing way, I think is just as important. I mean, you know, Maria, I'll go to you on this one. I think that game is just maybe even, I think, more important than the one against Argentina, because you have history on your side and you're at home, and sometimes the overconfidence can get to you, and that's one factor where it can come back to bite you and you don't get the result that you want.
No, you're definitely right. It's something that we can't take for granted, the fact that we have won we have a perfect record against Bolivia and we're at home. So, you know, the comfortable feelings come around, and, you know, the team might feel like, okay, you know, it's Bolivia. They got trashed this last 2 games that they had against Argentina and Brazil. But, you know, I think it's one of the games that we can definitely get a good 3 points out of. And not only that, but continue the practice that they need, continue that, you know, Berizzo putting, testing, you know, who can play better. You know, remember, we're still in the first phase, and we still have a bunch of games to go through, but it's important to keep practicing and keep that mentality that, you know, we need to figure out who works with who, and what works best. So it could be one of those games as well.
And I think historically, yeah, we've won all 9 games against Bolivia at home, but it hasn't always been plain sailing. I was checking some of the results because I actually remember Fede talking about going to games. I went to the qualifier against Bolivia in 2009. So when it was the good team, like, you know, the Martino team, Cabañas was playing. It's actually in that game, Cabañas scored his last ever goal for the national team in Paraguay. He'd only go and score one more afterwards. And that game was 1-0, and Cabañas scored a penalty. It was a horrible game against Bolivia, when really we should have been winning easily. And I actually look further back, even the great team, the classic team of 1998 on the road to the qualifiers, they beat Bolivia 2-1 in 1997 with goals from Peque Benitez, who was a great player in his day, and of course Carlos Gamarra, who's you know, one of the all-time great defenders for Paraguay. but they have struggled. And I think is exactly the kind of things we're talking about, is that possible complacency, that feeling maybe that, okay, this, the pressure is all on us now because we should be guaranteed these 3 points. And even the last game, the last qualifier was also a 2-1 win. So again, a tight game. So while we're hoping for Paraguay to hopefully steamroll it, because this is a side that in Bolivia, they're not even playing football yet. They haven't come back from the break. There's no local football. And there's all kinds of problems going on with their association and their, the payment of basic things like the transport, the players, all that kind of thing. But despite that, there's still a lot of pressure on Paraguay. So, I mean, if I had to predict, I'd predict they'd win, but it might be harder fought than we're all hoping.
I think, Ralph, not even their coach wants to be in this team. I've heard something that Cesar Farias wanted to ask for some vacations on his free time. He wants to coach a club or something. So I believe not even his coach wants to be in this team. That's a funny thing going in Bolivia. You never know what to expect from them, right? You're always thinking that you're going to crush their heads. And then you have games like the ones that you're mentioning. You have those tight games that you suffer more than what you expect. But, more than anything, what you hope to get out of this match versus Bolivia is a lot of chances in front of the goal, which is something that we didn't have versus Venezuela, that we didn't have versus Peru. So in those matches versus the weak teams, you have to show your stronger side. You have to show that you're a team that can also attack, that can have the ball. This is something that Berizzo always talks about. So maybe you won't have the ball that much versus Argentina, but versus Bolivia, I think everybody is expecting for Paraguay to have the ball and show that it can not only handle the ball, but also show that it can do something with it, which is also something that we talked about and something that the team needs to evolve in that sense. But I think the big test is going to be Argentina. This is the big match or the last big match in the end of the year. We need to show even the guys, I believe in the locker room, this is important for them to know that they're up there with the big teams, that they're ready against teams like Argentina, like they did in Copa America, but the style is changing also. I remember those games in Copa America versus Argentina versus Brazil, and we were way too defensive. And now we're trying to have the ball more, and we're trying to play with more attacking players. And I hope we see that against Argentina, even if we're the away team, even if a tie doesn't look like a bad result. But from the get-go, from the first moment of the game, from the start of the game, I'm expecting a team to try to play the same way we played against Peru and versus Venezuela, because that's the speech from Berizzo also. That's what we have to have, that style in every match. We have to play the same way. That's what you're gonna expect out of the team also.
I just wanted to also point out that the fact that we have away and home games doesn't really make a difference nowadays because of COVID. So I think we have a good advantage playing in Argentina, away in Argentina, even though we had good results before. But it's something to consider as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think obviously we all know how historic La Bombonera is when it's packed, be it a Boca game or even an Argentina game. But
we have, Roberto, a lot of players that also play in Argentina, right? If you look at this squad, most players have either played before or they're playing now in the Argentina league also.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think obviously we have a lot of players that have played against Argentina, have played in the league, have, like Maria said, have played against players who are at Argentina. We saw this weekend with Antonio Sanabria scoring against Barcelona, where Messi also scored as well. So yeah, there is that kind of familiar aspect. So to add into just more of the storylines heading into this one, it's a feeling of feeling optimistic, but cautiously. I think ultimately they know what they expect when it comes to Argentina. And yeah, again, I think the Bolivia one is a game where you have so many players fighting for these spots that they want to continue to go back to these next games next year, so that they can continue being part of a squad and a base of players that will consistently play all these World Cup qualifiers. So it'll be interesting. It will be a really interesting game for us and for everyone else.
I want to ask you guys a question. I'm gonna take you guys off the road maybe for a second there, but I'd like to know what player we haven't seen yet out of Berizzo, out of all the ones that he's calling out. There's even players that he called last time that didn't play, that weren't even called on this for these two matches. What players you'd like to see that still that we haven't seen play? You know, there's a lot of players that haven't come out of the bench either. Angel was a big surprise in the first match, so that shows you that you have players back there that can really back up the team. What players would you guys like to see yet that we haven't seen in the field?
Well, it's a player that we've seen before in Paraguay, but somebody that I think would be really interesting in this game is somebody like Lucena. I remember Lucena is like a great midfield player. He's very good at controlling possession, at finding spaces. But he's always played in Paraguay. He played for Libertad, now he's at Cerro. We've never really seen how he would do in a top level, except for Copa Libertadores. So this is a really interesting game if he was picked, which from looking at some of the lineups he could be included, is to see how good is his level. He's about 25, 26. He's kind of in the prime of his career. And for whatever reasons, he never managed to make that step abroad. And he reminds me a lot of a Paraguayan player in the past, Topo Cáceres, who was also at Libertad for a long time. Didn't make the move abroad until maybe it was a bit too late for his career. But he was also an excellent player that was part of the Paraguay team that went to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. And we saw in that World Cup that someone like Topo Cáceres, when he was at his prime, was good enough to be at that top level. So somebody like Lucena, it would be very interesting to see. He's won titles at Libertad. He's won titles now with Cerro. How good could he be in a game like this against a team as big as Argentina?
Well, I think also as well, I think a player that a lot of people would want to see play, and we don't know if he will, but someone that we've already been accustomed at watching is Richard Sanchez. You know, Richard Sanchez obviously has a good history against Argentina. He scored his debut goal against them in the Copa America. So he knows these type of matches. And I think I think a lot of fans want him to be in that midfield where he can be that kind of box-to-box midfielder and also try to track back well and start the attack as well. So yeah, he's definitely one that I think would be interesting. I mean, from a special point of view, I'd really like to see how Caco Romero does. I mean, that's a big thing for him. I mean, you know, he's played at youth level in Argentina. He played in Argentina. He was Argentine born and raised. Decides to play for Paraguay. I mean, what better way than to play probably the biggest game of your career than against the country that you were born in and raised in? I mean, that's important. And I think Ralph, if I remember correctly, we've seen also a lot of Argentine-born Paraguayans score in this game. Toro Acuna, if I remember correctly, scored against Argentina. You know, he's Argentine-born, played for Paraguay. So it just kind of puts in that kind of special factor about how we have all these Argentine Paraguayans. Gaston Jimenez as well is there. I mean, he scored in the last game. Maybe this one is going to be a really special game, especially since he was already coached by Scaloni. He played a friendly with Argentina under Lionel Scaloni, so clearly knows some of the teammates that he'll be facing if he does get the nod on Thursday, and that's going to be interesting. I mean, it will be very cool to see. I mean, we can only hope it could happen, but it would be very cool to see one of these guys score against their native country where they were born and raised in, and help their adopted country win.
Yeah, the one I remember, Roberto, is Jonathan Fabro, who scored the penalty we mentioned before in World Cup qualifiers. I'm trying to think if Lucas Barrios ever scored against Argentina, but I don't think so.
Copa America, yeah, he did. Copa America, 2015.
There we go.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So there it could be that X factor, right? Picking these players that have even added motivation apart from what we've all talked about, that kind of motivation you have. I think also just quickly another player I was thinking about is Sanabria that scored. And then you have Lescano, who's on form as well, but then Lescano didn't perform in the first two games. So is this, if you were looking to switch your striker, would this be the moment that you have somebody scoring two games in a row in La Liga? That could be an option.
You kind of took mine away, Ralph, but it's okay. I'll give it to you. I was gonna say, yeah, Tony Sanabria is one of the guys that I've been following for a while now, since he had that big goal against Real Madrid. I think back in 2018. So he's someone that I've been looking after. But I think he deserves more of a playing time. I feel like he's a great player. He doesn't have as much goals, I guess, as he should. I think because he's a great player. If you see him play, he makes a lot of chances, and he's fast, and he knows how to communicate as well. So I think he could be one of the players that Berizzo should be testing out more and giving more time. Another player that I also thought of, and not because he has my middle name, Cecilio Dominguez, which I don't understand why he's not being called. I don't know, Fede, if you have some backstory on that, but I think he's been a good player so far, in my opinion, at Guarani. He's had some fabulous games, but I'm just not sure why Berizzo hasn't called. I think he could have been called like instead of other players here that I see on the rosters. But maybe sometime, maybe the next qualifiers phase that we see. But I would like to see him more playing time as well.
Well, I'm agreeing with most of the guys that you guys with most of the names that you guys are mentioning. I have a couple myself. We have such good players. It's really hard to not give him at least a chance. You have Roberto Rojas that hasn't played much lately in River, but he's such a good player, and he can be an option also on the right side, especially when we lose Alberto Spinola, that I think has taken a big advantage after these first two matches by his level, and because he's a fast defender also. I think that style of defenders can really adjust to the style that Berizzo is trying to play also. And I think Roberto Rojas, Patiño, that was on the last first two matches, I think he's another center back that could fit into that style. They're different from Gomez. They're different from Balbuena. They're not as tall. They're not as big. But they're fast players, and they cover a lot better. I believe that the space, that's defensive wise, right? And then you have in the midfield so many different kind of players. I believe Richard Sanchez has paid his debt, and he deserves more playing time. I think that's why people are asking so much about him. And then you have players that can be so important coming off the bench, like Oscar Romero, like Kaku Romero Gamarra. Also, Oscar and Kaku give you that set piece, those free kicks that we lacked, I believe, in the first two matches also. So maybe count with these guys. And I believe you have to give it to Tony Sanabria eventually. The 9, the shirt, you have to throw it at him and be like, this game is yours. You have to do something in this game or 2 or 3 games, and wait for him to really show up, because he's been in the national team for a while and he just hasn't been able to get that spot. But right now it looks like Lescano is still going to be the striker, and then you have a whole bunch of guys that are playing for that spot. You got Raul Bobadilla that's again making the squad, and you have Sebastian Ferreira, which is the fresh name, but is probably the guy with the best scoring average in 2020. So maybe he's the hot guy right now, and maybe you just have to put him in the pitch, and who knows, maybe he makes an important goal in one of these two matches.
And it's good that you mentioned possible lineups, because I know, well, obviously we're going to get into who should play and obviously should start. Fede, you did have some information about that. Certainly, I'm sure you guys, or from what I understand, we haven't seen any official news about a possible starting 11. But Fede, I believe that you have something up your sleeve, or at least that was given to you. So what's the latest on a possible lineup for the game against Argentina?
Yeah, keep in mind, we don't have the chance to get to the practices. This is just information about, just talking to the guys, just talking to different journalists here in Paraguay. But Silva is going to be the starting goalkeeper. Keep in mind that we had trouble with the goalkeepers. We have several injured players, especially Fernandez Gatito. That was the first goalkeeper versus Venezuela. He's out for a while now, and they even questioned Berizzo about that on the first match versus Peru. I have to correct myself. Fernandez got injured and he couldn't come back after that. Silva, Anthony, he's going to be our goalkeeper, a guy with with a lot of experience. In the defense, Spinola apparently is going to be at 100%. He's been practicing lately. He hasn't been playing these last couple of matches with Cerro Porteño, his club, but he is apparently going to be in the starting right side. And then you have Gomez and Balbuena apparently being the center backs. Balbuena getting another chance here besides Gomez. Balbuena playing a lot lately in West Ham. And Alonso might take the left side because Arzamendia didn't make it, and especially because Blas Riveros got injured on the last minute, and he couldn't make it on the squad either. He was one of the guys that was called up but couldn't make it to the practices. And then in the midfield, Jimenez, Morel, and Villasanti. Here we have Morel coming in, right? Especially because of Cuba's absence. Also, Cubas was going to miss the first match versus Argentina, but he also got injured, so he's out of the next two matches. He won't be against Bolivia either. So there we have probably Jorge Morel, and Ralph was mentioning him. Why not think of Lucena also taking that spot in the midfield? And then I believe the three guys that started the last match will be again up there: Almiron, Lescano, and Angel Romero, that won his spot after that very special moment versus Peru in the first match.
Yeah, certainly a lot of names. I mean, guys, it's I think you would feel, I would say, in agreement of the defense. I think the midfield, you do have a bit of options, but it's the case of like, who do you take out? Like, you have options with Matias Rojas, Richard Sanchez, Lucena. You have a ton of options there. In the attack, still no Sanabria. I mean, that's certainly it feels as if though his form, but again, he's competing with someone who's also on form in Mexico with Lescano. It's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to have that kind of competition, but ultimately it seems as if though Lescano has something to prove, and I think it might be enough for this game against Argentina.
I think one of the things Lescano also gives you is the running, right? I mean, he's a guy that can also cover a lot of ground without the ball, chase a lot of balls, and that might be something that Berizzo is thinking. Even though he wants us to hopefully have more possession, there's a likelihood we won't have the ball for long stretches of the game. So maybe he can trust Lescano a bit more in that position, and then otherwise, across the team, I kind of generally agree with it. There's maybe the one question mark is Morel or Lucena. That would be between those two. I'm kind of a fan of both, but what I like about Lucena is I think he gives you a bit more control. His technical ability with the ball is maybe stronger. Where Morel is stronger, I think, is recuperation and kind of that defensive positioning.
Let's remind people, Raf, that Jorge Morel had two serious problems this year. First, he had dengue, which is a mosquito biting you and having fever for days. And he got COVID for a month ago. So he's in recovery. He's not 100%. That's the way we've seen him in the matches with Guarani. We haven't seen that Jorge Morel that we've seen before. That guy hasn't come back yet. So we got to tell that also to people. I think he's a very important guy. I think he played a couple of friendlies, and he looks like a guy that can solve you a lot of problems there in the midfield. But I don't know if he's 100% right now. And Lucena is playing in the best team in Paraguay, Cerro Porteño, and he's one of their best players also. If you put him there, one versus the other one, I think Lucena's having a better moment right now.
Yeah, and he also plays alongside Villasanti, who we're assuming is going to be there. So they already have that understanding. And then just one mention of the defense is we were talking about players that know Argentina. Well, Junior Alonso actually played at Boca Juniors and the games in the Bombonera. So he's a perfect fit there. And he's also having a great season with Atletico Mineiro that I don't think they're top, but they're fighting in the title at the moment.
They're within the top three, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So that's a great person to be able to fill in inverted commas at left back, because he's actually did start his career at left back before moving inside. So I think it's a strong team, mainly in agreement with all of it. There's a couple of toss-ups, I guess, the Sanabria Lescano and the Lucena Morel.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Raf. It's a great team. I was going to say that I think we're really lucky to have so many options out there. And it's really sad that we have a bunch of our good players out, but this is what all these options are for. And I think that we have a fantastic pool of players that Beriso can choose from. So it's very positive in my opinion. It looks very good. We still don't know. We still have other players that haven't been called. So who knows? And I just wanted to point that out that we have a good set of call ups this time.
And I think as well, more than anything, and I think we mentioned this even when the first call ups came in, is that you want to maintain a base of players. I mean, we've already used so many different players under Verizos, like 49 or something. So you don't want to go over that for the next couple months. I think ultimately you want to maintain a base of players, because because I think that's important for many of those teams that want to make the World Cup. I think they want to solidify a team of the same players and kind of play by memory of what we see with teams like, I don't know, Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, et cetera, et cetera. If you have players,
especially Roberto, in these first 4 matches, right? That you only have a month in between. Now after these 4 matches, you're gonna have to wait until March, I believe, right? There you're gonna have 4 months, and players are probably gonna be in a totally different form. And then you can call out of players like Maria said that are probably out right now or that are injured also. Then we might see other players. But right now, and especially since after what we saw versus Peru and then Venezuela, Berizzo didn't change that much.
Yeah. And I think it's great that we're having this discussion and we're saying there's probably only 2 players or 3 players that we're thinking about. So that base is there, right? It's not like we're all thinking, oh, why did he pick so-and-so player? Which we were saying at this time a month ago. I think with the lineup of Peru, we're like, oh, really? Is he gonna, why this player, why this team? And we've kind of seen more of the idea over 2 games. And we're all sat here thinking, okay, this makes sense. So I think we're finding that base, which is very positive.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's like you said, it's a good mention that anything can happen by the time of here to March. But I think for these type of games where these guys are traveling from all around the world and you only have a short amount of time to train, so it's best to always have the players that you've already been accustomed to and what worked last month, and then to play that out in the first game, because I'm assuming tomorrow at the time of recording they have to travel to Argentina and then they have to play the game. So
but there are gonna be a couple of things you are not gonna repeat though, right, Berizzo?
Oh,
I mean, you're not gonna put Almiron on the right side again. You're not gonna put Hernan Perez again on the team. Some things didn't really work on the first 2 matches, and I hope he doesn't experiment that much anymore. Those things look kind of weird versus Peru. And then you saw the change in the second half after he had to probably fix his own mistakes also. I hope Berizzo learned from his mistakes. This is a guy that's also learning, right? He already did this with Chile, with Bielsa by his side, but he's the head coach now. He's the one that's making the big calls, the big decisions, especially on the second half when you have the changes, when you can make the subs to actually do something different with the team. I hope he starts picking them right also. For now, it's only Angel Romero, the big change that he's made on this team.
Definitely, and he was the one obviously that scored, so it shows maybe what he has in mind. So yeah, we'll have to wait. But guys, I mean, certainly it's time to now predict. I know. Yes,
only Ralph, please.
No, everybody, you too, Fede. And just because of that, I will go to you first, but I'm going to give you my predictions. So I think they are 2 games that are obviously winnable. I think we have to feel a bit optimistic in both of them, really. And it's kind of funny to say that, especially for the first game. But, Ralph, like we had mentioned in the beginning, we know who we're dealing with. We have the history. The players know that they're up for it. And, we hear it from so many people. It's always special to play against Argentina. So what better way than to not get a good result there to show how serious we'll be? I mean, I would like for a win. I don't think we'll get it in this one. I actually will think that this Argentina side, yes, it has star power. It has great talent. We all admit that. But maybe it's not as convincing as one would say. I personally agree I personally think that Paraguay can come out of this game with a good result. And for me, I would go for a 1-1 draw. I think if they're able to get a 1-1 draw La Bombonera, that gives us even more motivation to get the 3 points against Bolivia, which I think they will win. I think they should be convincing in that game. It will be tight because I think history proves it that we shouldn't get complacent and we shouldn't be arrogant against a team like Bolivia. So we'll see what happens. But I think they will get the result and they will win. I'm going to say 3-0 in this game as well.
Well, I like that prediction, Roberto. I'm gonna say that we're gonna get another historical win versus Argentina away. Yes, I have. I have my confidence with these guys now after what I saw in the first two matches, and I think we need a big win like this one. Hopefully, this time the refs won't do what they usually do, and hopefully the bar won't be there looking for something that doesn't really happen. And hopefully that doesn't happen, and we beat Argentina, and then we come here also and win probably a tough match versus Bolivia like they normally do, and get the 6 points and hit Palma here, hit the streets with the people and start celebrating, since we're going to be closer and we're going to be up there in qualifications where we want to see Paraguay in between those teams that are going to the next World Cup with only 4 games being played.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think getting 6 points? Yeah, 10 points within your first 4 games is huge. It's a huge thing to get into. Even when I mentioned to get 7 to finish unbeaten is great, honestly. Sorry, was it 7? No. 3, 6, 8. Never mind, 8 points. Yeah, it's a positive thing, and you stay unbeaten. I think that's the important thing. But Ralph, I mean, this one is certainly, you got to put your history cap on this one, but also, the bookie. It's always interesting to see what the bookies say about this one as well. But how do you see Paraguay faring these 2 games against Argentina and Bolivia?
I'm really surprised by Fede's optimism to start. Like in the first preview, he was kind of the guy that was a bit like, I'm not too sure. And now it's like, okay, we're going to win in Argentina. Okay, I'll give you a quick bit of history. We've played Argentina 102 times and we've won 16 times. So the odds are not so much in our favor, like at 15%. I'm gonna side with Roberto on this one with the 1-0 draw. I think I can see us playing a good game there, and I can see Messi scoring a penalty or something, which he seems to be doing every week at the moment. So I'll go for the 1-0 draw because of the Messi factor. Otherwise, we could have grabbed the victory. And for Bolivia, I'm actually quite confident because I have a feeling he will make a couple of those changes and use some of the younger players that have something to prove. Maybe even a Sebas Pereira or definitely a Sanabria. See a couple of players like Arzamendia who will hopefully be back for that second game. And I think we can run out 3-0 winners. I'll go against that Bolivia team. So 1-1 and 3-0.
Love it, Ralph. I was gonna say at the beginning of this last segment, I was gonna go for a draw with Argentina, but then I remembered Messi hasn't been playing so well lately, and that's something that he's famously known for in Argentina, not playing well, not coming through, not finishing. So that's something that we have to remember as well. So I'm going to go and be optimistic as always, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 for Argentina and a 3-0 with Bolivia, which is very confident as well.
So I think, yeah, I mean, this is it kind of feels weird, but at the same time, you look at all the factors that come in, you start to think to yourself, yeah, it could be done. It could be done. We can go into these 2 games and get 6 points. And yeah, that would be a fantastic way to end the year. And it would be a complete 180. Fede, I remember you were talking about how you weren't as convinced of this side as of yet, but to then go play their first 4 games and to finish unbeaten and maybe, if they're lucky, maybe go top of the table, it'd be great. It'd be great.
I think it's just what we need to keep building, because this is a team that's doing just that with Berizzo, with the new head coach, with new players also coming in. I think this team needs these big wins or at least make 2 wins get a streak of wins. You know, I think we need to feel that confidence, and the people also, they need that happiness. They need to get that feeling back with their national team, with their Albirroja. So I think it would be fabulous. That's why I'm going with the 6 points. Don't make me think about it too much.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have every right. You know, Maria, I mean, you picked in all the games that we predicted, the 4 games, went for 4 wins. So aside from the 1 game against Peru, maybe you go 75% and be perfect on that part. So yeah, I mean, it's fingers crossed that we get good results. I mean, I think there's something there that works. I think there is a team that wants to get their goal. And, you know, I'm trying to go back to the interview that we had with Diego. It's just like, these guys know what's at stake. They know that they can make their own history. And again, it's just getting these results. It's getting these games against the big teams like Argentina. I mean, like I said, if you're able to get a win in Buenos Aires, which Rob as well, I mean, aside from us, teams don't really get too much results in Buenos Aires as well. I mean, some teams have beaten them, obviously, in Argentina as well. I mean, we've beaten them. We've gotten draws and whatnot. So who's to say that we can't come out of this? And, you know, people start to take a lot of attention towards us. Like, they start to feel serious and think, okay, maybe this team has enough to do something in this qualifier. So yeah, it'll be interesting, and fingers crossed that we can get those 2 results and to end the year of what has been a really terrible year, I think, for all of us in terms of COVID. But at least for the Paraguayan national team, we can feel that kind of optimism heading into these 2 games. So yeah, no, again, it's going to be fun. I can't wait. It should be super exciting. And again, fingers crossed that we can get those 2 results against Argentina and Bolivia. So guys, I mean, I have nothing else to mention. So I think it's a good way to wrap this up. So thank you again for listening. For myself, Roberto Rojas, for Ralph Hanna, Maria Britos, and Fede Perez, thank you for listening to our World Cup qualifier preview. See you soon.